Hey guys, so today we're going to talk about the 9.1% unemployment rate that just came out this month. Now, last month's unemployment rate was the exact same, and the unemployment rate's basically been steady at close to 9.1%. Okay? Now, a lot of people have different explanations for why this is, but I think the explanation that makes the most sense to me is that the United States is turning into a regular service economy. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, the United States, the easiest way to think about this is during World War II, the United States had a strong industrial base, and we ended up blowing up all these other nations, and they basically could not manufacture after the war. This gave us an advantage economically. We could produce cars, we could produce boats and stuff. It doesn't really matter. We could produce. Now, eventually these other economies caught up, but we had money from when we were, running shit. And that allowed for, it basically meant that all these other nations came to the United States to sell things. Okay? Now, what's happened is basically that extra money we made during World War II, or after World War II, that's gone. That no longer is there. Well, to a certain extent, that money that we had that was extra dulled the effects of a service economy, even though that's what we were becoming. You understand? So we did not have this problems that service economies usually have, like high unemployment. There's a couple others, but we're talking about unemployment today. Okay? Well, now that we don't have that extra money, we're facing those problems. Now, a lot of people say, well, what should the government do? Now, there's different options for this, but I think the government is also in big trouble. Now, if you're going to fix the problem, you've got to think of it like this, okay? You've got to figure out a way to get the economy going. Now, there's different strategies of this, but I'm going to go through them. Now, a huge thing that impacts the economy is the government. We'll start there, even though that doesn't seem that practical. Start there, we're going to start there, okay? Now, the government is currently in a huge problem. It's got huge deficits, gigantic deficits. Now, there's different ways of solving this problem. And what we usually do is borrow money. But like I said, our credit card's maxed out, if you will. B, you cut spending. Now, cutting spending can help, but the problem is that with a 10% unemployment, that may be permanent or, is not going to go away. If this is the transition to a full service economy, you're basically just cutting the safety net for those people. And we don't really have that much of a safety net for them in the first place. I'm sorry, compare Medicaid, Medicare to the rest of the world, it isn't anything. You understand? Now, you cut those people off, the problem that you face is those people are going to be angry. Those people are going to riot. You're talking about letting those people starve if you really start hacking away at Medicaid, Medicare, and stuff like that. Okay? So the problem is that those people will end up rioting, and then the state really faces more problems. Now, the other option in cutting is that you cut the military. Now, the military is very large in the United States. In a lot of ways, it kind of functions as a safety net itself. A lot of Americans come in from different levels of the economic scale, but I think the vast majority of them are poorer, economically, because it's a great gig to get, if in a lot of ways. Not, honor to our service members. I'm not trying to insult them or anything. I want to make that clear. I'm just trying to explain the economic aspects of it. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, you join the military, not only are you, protecting our country, but what ends up happening is that you get, college, you get universal health care, you get a lot of little benefits that function like safety nets would around the world, but you have to, you're in the military. You understand? Basically, they're taking you off of the market scale, so the unemployment rate is lower also. So, yeah. Now, you could cut that, but the problem is, once again, you're hitting something of a safety net, number one, and then you got the same problem as I noted earlier. Those people are going to be upset. They don't have any food. They're probably going to riot. Now, now if you just cut, also with the military spending, all these people have been at war for quite some time. Now they come back. What often happens when a large military force comes back to the country it's from, is sometimes that doesn't translate well. Sometimes they end up joining groups that end up trying to topple the government. This is highly unlikely, but I'll give you a couple examples. You look at if you look at Italy during World War II, well, when it was building up its fascist state, you had a bunch of the black shirts, a large number of them were military. You look at Adolf Hitler's rise to power, a lot of the people in the brown shirts, military, they're disgruntled military men. A lot of them were, okay? So, of course, that's a world war, that there's some differences. I'm not getting into that. Either way, that possibility is incredibly removed, okay? Now, having said that, those problems emerge from cutting the military. Now, the other option is that you increase taxes. Now, if you increase taxes, option C, if you will, where are you going to increase them? Well, where's the money at is the easy question to ask after that. Well, you got 4% of the population, 4, that owns 80% of the wealth. That's a lot of wealth, okay? Then you got the rest of the 80% of the population owns what, 20% of the wealth, and that's a lot of people just don't own anything. They're all in debt, okay? So you can tax from the lower end, but you're not going to get the benefit. And also, there's just not that much money there. There's just not that much there, okay? Now you could tax, and you probably cause those people to go hungry if you really tax them and didn't offer any benefits for them. You know what I'm saying. You tax the wealthy. The wealthy have the money. You can argue that they won't create jobs, or that they'll leave the country. That sometimes happens. But with the tax rates that we have, they're incredibly low in comparison to the rest of the world. Chances are that's not going to happen. As long as they're not too high, okay? They're not going to leave the country, and they'll probably continue to create jobs. That's usually how this problem gets solved, by other service economies. Now, we're the United States, maybe we won't solve it that way. The other argument is that these people create jobs, these very wealthy individuals, right? You've never gotten a job from a poor man. Classic example. But this is the logistics aspect of it is, if you got 80% of the money in the hands of 4% of the population, how do you solve a money problem without tapping that 80%? Now, some people say that they'll grow the pie. They haven't been doing that very well lately. Sorry, we're growing at 1 point or 2%, GDP every year. And frankly, the people on the bottom half aren't benefiting from this growth. It's basically just the top. So if that's the case, you kind of have to deal with the top. There's not really much way around it. As far as I see, I think that option is kind of clear. The bottom 80% just don't have the money for this. I mean, they're on welfare. They're already paying the government. You can toke them, tax them, but it's basically you're just moving money around, But if you tax the wealthy, then you actually get some movement. Arguably. Also, if you ever wanted to go back to a economy where we were, the consumers of the world, if you want to put it that way, you gotta give the vast majority of Americans the ability to consume, which means is that they gotta have some money to pay off their debts, number one, and then eventually start consuming more goods. That's the only way you're going to get it going. That's the only way we're going to return to a state of normal. Or we switch out of a service economy and start producing world goods, which nobody seems to want to do, either way. I think that now I've gone through some of these options. I think the simple answer to all these problems is that you got to do a little bit of each. In other words, you got to tax the wealthy more. I can't see a way around that, okay? You probably have to cut some benefits, though to tell you the truth, those benefits are there for a reason. We don't have much of a safety net in comparison to the rest of the world. That's just true. That's not me lying to you or manipulating facts. I'm serious about that, okay? Now, so you're going to tax more, and you're going to cut frankly, cutting the military is one of those dangerous things where you can end up of a bad scenario. Also, you're weakening the national security because our military is smaller. But I think, to tell you the truth, that's probably the option to go with. You cut a little bit of the safety net, but you cut a lot more of the military if you're going to cut. Because number one, the military is larger than any other military, yada yada yada. You've heard this point, okay? But I just don't see how, if you thought tax cuts worked, we've done that. It doesn't seem to work that well. And if the government is in crisis, you gotta raise taxes or else the government falls apart. And if the government falls apart, everything falls apart. Then the state becomes destable. It loses its stability. You know, that's my point. And once the state loses its stability, it doesn't matter what kind of businessman you are. That's going to be hard to make jobs. You understand? Now I think that there are regulations that are unnecessary for business that hamper business growth. I don't think there's very much question about that. I'll give you an example. There was a guy. We were dropping my dog off at a basically this place that takes care of dogs while you go away for the weekend. A kennel, that's what it's called. Now, I was dropping her off, and I got to talking to the guy, and he was upset that he had to redo this tank. Now, why did he have to redo it? Well, the state legislator basically said that he needed a tank for cows. Because they think he's going to eventually sell his property to the guy next door who takes care of cows. But the guy's like, no, I take care of dogs. He can do that when it's his turn. Well, he said, well, no, we don't want that to happen. You really should have this tank. It's a requirement. All animal facilities in this county have to have these giant tanks. Well, he says, okay, fine, I'll do that. Well, he ends up doing that. Well, what ends up happening is the state representative, or I guess county representative, comes over and he says, he checks out the tank. He says, yeah, that's a great tank, but it turns out you need two of them. Well, the guy's like, why do I need two of them? I clearly don't need this tank in the first place for, it's like a water tank, just so you know, for cleaning up crap, to put it simply. Well, he's like, well, I clearly didn't need this tank. We don't take care of that many dogs. These aren't cows. We don't need it. Oh, I said, well, that may be, but no, you need to get another tank. Well, he goes over, he goes and gets another tank. Well, then once again, the representative comes over and he says, well, it turns out you don't need either of these tanks anymore. You just got to get this hydro super tank. Okay? Well, the guys, this is when I saw him. He was installing the super tank, and he's like, number one, I don't even know how spraying water cleans up, cow shit. First off, personally, I don't know how that works. I don't understand. I'm not a farmer. I'm going to be honest, and I'm not a person that deals with cattle. But I do know that if you're taking care of, this guy's taking care of like 4 dogs. He's living in a small house. This isn't like this is a real serious company. And so, he's got his house that's like a double wide and a little fenced off area for the dogs. And he's got this huge tank that's almost the size of his house. And it's just, it's unnecessary. He doesn't need that tank. That tank does not serve a purpose. But he has to have it in order to be legit with his dog carrying. So I don't know. That kind of regulation bugs me. And I think that there is something to over-regulating small business. However, having said that, if you're big business, I think that you can cause big problems, and then you should probably face more regulation. But I've probably talked enough about this. Once again, to just go over my answer to this problem, I think that you need to increase taxes on the wealthy because nobody else has money. And the corporations, because that's where our money is. That's where the United States has its money. You can't fix an economic problem with taxes without hitting them, okay? There's no money anywhere else. You do need to do some cuts. I tend to go away from the safety net because we don't have much of one in comparison to the rest of the world. While there are abuses in our safety net, there's no doubt. Seriously cutting it probably is an unnecessary option or unwanted option, in my opinion. The military, I'd probably pull out of the wars and close some bases, go Ron Paul on this scenario, and I would cut future military spending and primarily focus on veteran care. That's basically it. Subscribe, comment, rate. If you disagree, I'd love to hear why. If you've got other answers, frankly, Fuck, if you know how to solve this problem, tell me. I'd like to know. Anyway, that's it. Have a great day. Bye.